In June of 2024, I made the first part of a tier list where I ranked Souls and Soulslikes that I have played, and it has been pretty successful considering the size of our channel. I got some game recommendations and words of encouragement for part 2 in the comments, so why not to follow on them? I played some more Souls games over the past months, so let's go through them together, shall we? Before we start though, I have to mention this one is gonna have less entries, as about some I ran for way too long, and I don't want this video to be like 5 hours long. What it means though is that I might definitely do part 3 of the series, as I do plan on playing more of these types of games, as I love them dearly personally, so I would be excited for part 3 if you all would be willing to watch it. Oh, and if you're new here, I recommend checking part 1 of the tier list as well. I'm Akuma, this is RNG, and yet another Soul rant. The first of our entries is The Last Faith. The Last Faith was the first one I picked since Mortal Shell, and it has been a game I was interested in since its announcement. At first, I wasn't sure if I'm going to include games like Blasphemous or Hollow Knight if I'm ever going to play them, but after this one, I am certain I will. I'm not sure about those two, as I haven't played them yet, but Last Faith is undeniably a Souls-like with its mechanics and settings. I kept an eye on The Last Faith for quite a while, as just from the trailers and such, this game looked like Bloodborne, but 2D. Which, don't mind if I do, the more Bloodborne the better. Well, that's actually something I changed my mind about. What can really impact how I feel about a game is when they flourish with personality, and identity that makes them stand out. There are games like Okami, Omori, Grizz, Cuphead, Cookie Cutter, and such. And while I do love Bloodborne from the bottom of my heart, and this is very obviously made by people who do as well, the fact that this is just a Bloodborne 2.0 takes a lot off of its own charm for me. That's an issue with many Souls-likes, I think. Usually it's just another dark medieval fantasy, grim and dark, in a world left with no hope. So many of them appear very samey in settings, with some exceptions, but either they copy Dark Souls settings, or Bloodborne one. One of the strongest points of this game is still the art. Not necessarily what they portray in concept, but the execution is staggeringly good. The entire game is done in pixel art, and seeing the animation is just wow. Absolutely gorgeous, mad respect to the animators. I did try pixel art myself, even like some simpler animations, and man, it's hard. I mean, animation overall is, but you get what I'm saying. There are obviously tons of helpful tools for the animators, sprite artists, and level designers, but still, making it work is another thing, and I really can't get over how good some of these animations are. I hope that one day I see these devs publish something from their own heads, something unique and fresh, because this is obviously a very talented team they got. But the fact that you get into an area or meet an enemy and you immediately know what this is clearly inspired by, it's kind of distracting and takes away from the immersion for me. There were multiple instances of me being sort of disappointed by this, originally excited or at least curious what's ahead, only to see something I already know, and quite honestly from something much, much better. Like, it's Bloodborne we are talking about, duh! While the exploration was okay and not really remarkable, filled with enemies that were cool but sometimes annoying as you would expect, the main gripe I have are the bosses. For Platinum, I went through all the bosses obviously, I do try to go for Plats when I can. The real issue to me is that the bosses were not hard because they were hard. They would have massive health pools that would contain another city of Venice, that would make like the boss fights necessarily long. Or they would walk a lot, and easily get out of my range, like, bitch, stop walking for 2 seconds! Or they pull some bullshit move that really sucked. Some bosses, like Burned Apostate or Manfred, love homing spells. The Starborn Hunter and Lisa would not only have a healing vial, but also would easily parry you and heal via that. Which is, by the way, the cheapest fucking move you can give to a boss. Like, no one likes bosses to heal, please stop doing this. Or they would bring moves that would make them invulnerable, only to lengthen the fucking boss fight. Medea shields itself with a spell. Ladakh would fly off and have you fight some add-ons, that were previously a boss, by the way. And Nixeroth, I fucking see you. I saw that. Don't you think I wouldn't recognize something that made me consider DIY lobotomy with 2 fucking soup spoons? Like, I appreciate the reference, but for the love of God, why this? The game does have multiple endings, and they were exactly like in Dark Souls 2. One is accepting the throne and not having to fight anyone. The other actually caused me a mental breakdown. The ending is you refusing a throne, and walking off to the monologue of Aldi- Wait. Wrong game, my bad. The other is refusing the throne and engaging in a double boss fight. That would take care of the second ending. I did defeat all the optional and hidden bosses until that point, like the Nixeroth and Harbinger, which triggered a boss fight that can be compared to Moon Presence as a secret boss, which would account for ending number 3. I was in tears when the first trophy for the throne refusal didn't pop. It seemed like I would need to do an entire new playthrough just to get this one ending. But luckily, the ending trophies popped once I killed Medea and watched the closing cutscene. I don't know how I feel about the game. I definitely played much worse or less entertaining games, but there are certainly gripes I cannot ignore. I know I mentioned other games being copies of Bloodborne, but games like Steel Rising and Lies of P, despite the similarities, still have more of their own personality than The Last Faith. Even the mechanics, location, the enemies, the bosses, it all seemed very uninspired. Even the story, which I will be honest, it completely left my brain through my right ear the moment I was done reading, because of the necessity to have characters talk a shit ton in hard to understand language. Like, it's English, but it's very old-fashioned, and I am bilingual and I have a very hard time reading all that shit. Like, I get it, you can be a Victorian-era hunter and go like, yup, what up, bruh? But, like, it would be funny, but it wouldn't work. That doesn't change the fact that English isn't my first language, so understanding archaic terms is difficult, so if you ask me about the story, I have no fucking idea. Make of this what you will. It was a decent game, I guess. A solid Metroidvania for sure. I just wish this was something more unique. To me, it's probably B rank, maybe higher B rank. Just like I said with Mortal Shell, art style can carry you only so far. But I'm sure there are some people who might love the Bloodborne art style and love it about this game, so I wouldn't say it's objectively a flaw. I might be in the minority here, which is perfectly fine. So, if you are one of those people that absolutely love this game for being a second Bloodborne, more power to you. Remnant from the Ashes. This game is probably another B rank. I know there are already many of them here, but from my experience, these games are mostly good or at least decent, and I really have no reason to put them lower than this. It's just that more times than not, these games can't reach the qualities of From Software, or few really good Soulslikes. Of course, I am judging by how I have enjoyed the game, so this is not objective at all. No tier lists are. In the case of Remnant, it's what I said in the Last Faith section, mainly with the setting of a grim, dark, hopeless world. It's the premise that really captivated me though, which is Dark Souls, but with guns. This game is literally the definition of parry this you filthy casual meme, and I'm a big fan. Back in the day when I played this game for the first time, way before playing Bloodborne, I didn't think this could work, but it actually does. You have the same key mechanics of bonfires, stamina, rolling, replenishable heals, and bosses after finishing an area. The core is there, except giving you a shotgun instead of a sword and aim instead of a lock-on. The scoring would be probably lower if I played solo. In single player, this game was fucking brutal, and I doubt that I, a casual and a scrub, would get too far on my own. I had the benefit of having a friend who was up to play, and yeah, it has been a blast. Pun intended. I don't believe we got too far. It's hard to guess how far we are depending on a boss, since every playthrough is completely randomized. We did get the Guardian Heart and decided between 2 NPCs, which I don't know if they're set, but if not, they were the Swamp Queen and the Undying King in our run. I like shooter games, so I found it fun, but obviously I have my gripes. The game is decent for the most part. The setting is basic and dull, but it fits. The gameplay is fun, but not innovative or outstanding. It's pretty much neutral all the way through. Only serious gripe is again the boss fight, in which I personally see the artificial difficulty shine like a fucking beacon. The bosses aren't bad on their own, but all of them have this one main focus and tons of add-ons, especially these little assholes that explode if you get close. They also inflict plague, or some similar status effect, and it makes your character cough, which makes them cancel any animation they were doing, and preferably vomit their fucking lungs out. Like, you would be shooting at this oncoming horde of trash mobs, and your character would just hide their gun like, pardon me, let me just... The gank is seriously the main difficulty here though. Boss, which was pretty difficult in my opinion, was the Dream Eater, but I really liked this one despite the gank. The Ixalis double boss, on the other hand, was absolutely horrible. We spent over like 2 hours in that fight, and while the first few attempts were very funny, I saw we both just slipped into angst and boredom, and not particularly slowly either. Then, after giving the Guardian Heart to the Swamp Queen, we were thrown into a boss fight with the Undying King, where we left off. After Ixalis, we were both pretty tired of the poor balancing and boss that seems to be too fast to dodge, with so many add-ons again, was not our idea of fun at that point. It's hard to say if we ever get to finish the game, as we both have long enough backlogs and a lot of trophy hunting, but I do imagine there might be some other session in the future. Only time will tell, and it's possible that if we continue and like the game more, the ranking might change. In the last tier list video, I talked about all FromSoft games except for one, and that's Elden Ring. At the time, I hadn't played the game proper, maybe except for like 10-ish hours, in which I mostly wandered around and killed only maybe 3 roaming or dungeon bosses. So while waiting for the release of some other games, I decided to go back, start a new character, and finally play and finish the game. I must say, it was a roller coaster, and I'm taking you on it with me, so buckle up. This is gonna be a long ass segment, so bear with me. The game is long as fuck, and there's a lot of content, so obviously, I will have a lot to say. And I know the majority of the clips used are the boss fights, but I never really think about recording just exploration. And, you know, it's here just so there's something in the background while I yap and complain. The main difference in this run was that I started with Samurai, so the bleed build on Uchi helped. And I knew about the Sleeping Dragon in Kaelid, where I farmed for some early levels. It was genuinely a game changer, because a huge issue on my first run was just how low the drops were, and how hard it was to level up somewhat naturally. I do think that this is still an early game problem, and yes, I know the game expects you to go into dungeons and kill roaming bosses and such, but you hopefully get my point. Right from the start, I was reminded of some exploration quality of life features that deserve the praise. One would say that the Sites of Grace being on every corner, but I would argue, actually. I think the fact there's so many of them around the world is helpful, 100%. But comparing them on a scale, I'd say that many of them are just as close as bonfires are to each other. It just doesn't seem like it due to the scale of the map and the fact that you can close the distances faster with Torrent. And before you say bonfires are further, there's still Dragon Slayer armor and the Grand Archive situation. What's great about Sites of Grace though is the fact that you can teleport on them from anywhere in the world, not just from other sites. It's great when you just want to pick up a certain item or to farm. The map is absolutely great also, though I can't imagine an open world game like this without one, because the entirety of Elden Ring is fucking huge. The world of Elden Ring is huge and has many caves, ruins, outposts, or villages to explore, large story areas, and things just scattered here and there for you to find. Personally though, not always worth it. I'm not saying the world sucks, the panorama always offers you something that when you see, you go, I wanna go there, I wanna check it out. Again, a village, an interesting building, a landmark of some sort. but due to the huge scale and variety of build options ER has, more times than not, you find a weapon or tool you might not even want or need. And the often long travels just don't seem worth the bother. Not for some crafting materials, consumables, or shitty ashes. And that's only when it comes to loot. First few dungeons are rewarding in runes and just overall experience, but after a while, the rune drops are nothing and you already know the bosses, so it's not really that exciting anymore after the first few. Besides Sites of Grace, the game adds Stakes of Marika, the so-called runback eraser. I disagree, because there definitely were times when there wasn't one, like fight with Renala or Loretta, so shush. But they are there for the most part, and they are extremely handy. They save you so much time on the runbacks, it's actually insane. The fact that groups of enemies or certain mobs replenished your flasks also saved so much time. It was so good to see. They gave me more flasks back so I can continue with exploration of a fortress, instead of having to run back to the Site of Grace and negate all my progress because I didn't get good enough. This is like one of the most useful things that I abused in this game. Beginning of my run seemed good this time. Even though I was over level 30 for Margit, I was more than happy to first try him. Same for Godric. Godric's theme is also absolute fire, by the way. It lives rent-free in my head since I fought him. It's one of the best soundtracks that came from these fucking series. After that, I did some more exploration, some collecting and quests, upgrading my flasks and such. Over the span, I did make quite the opinion on this game, and the more I played, the more firm I had onto that opinion. The game is definitely stellar when it comes to the area design and overall grandiose feeling wherever you go. Nokstella, Altus Plateau, Lindell, Crumbling Firm Azula, absolutely beautiful areas, even further up by the background music. I'm okay with Souls game not having any with exceptions, like Hypogean Jail, or just your hub worlds. But here the game left me with hair on my body standing and as tired than my pincer muscles at the end of my fight with Margit. It gives off some wonderful ambiance and supports the feeling you're supposed to feel from the area. Of course, it's not only the areas. This game is one that leaves me so fucking sad, and with another wave of art block purely by how amazing they are. I am currently trying to somehow design an armor for my fantasy character, and I find it so hard. And I know Elden Ring has a huge team of concept and visual artists, but still. Sometimes you have to wonder, how do you come up with so many cool ideas? It's an opinion that won't change. It's definitely one of the best looking games I played. At least in recent times. From graphics, attack and spell animations, some of the cutscenes. Yeah, this game looks fucking wonderful. But as I look at my notes, it actually looks like I went over last positive point of ER I had. That doesn't mean I didn't have a good time or didn't have a smooth sailing for some parts. Yes, I did struggle at times, but not gonna lie, I was screwing myself over. I platted all 3 Dark Souls games, Demon Souls Remake and Bloodborne at that point. Alas, I was used to a certain formula of how these games work, and that's why I struggled. I tried to brute force myself into getting good. I was too prideful to do anything but to solo melee a boss, because that's the only way I knew, and that I was taught by the community. If you struggle, get good. Summons are for losers. They are cheat. All this kind of bullshit, The breaking point came when I just said, fuck it, and swallowed that Souls veteran pride. I think it was right after Starscorch Radon. I went straight to Shorfa River, I think, and got to Valiant Gargoyles. I suck at multiple enemy fights, so I got help from Dee's brother, but I still found it too hard. That is where I decided I'm done with being a sore loser. I got my hands on the Mimic tier and fought it with it. Dee helped with one of the gargoyles, and when it was dead, and Dee soon after it, then it was time for the Mimic tier. This next bit might be one of my more controversial opinions, but Elden Ring is just overhyped and extremely glorified Dark Souls 2. Yeah, I know what I said. There is one major difference though. Elden Ring gathered so much hype and reputation that one would believe that this is the best game to have ever been created. Dark Souls 2, on the other hand, nah, we all went into that game with such a large amount of skepticism, it made us fat roll. But these games do share so many issues that I just don't see how people praise Elden Ring for what they hate about Dark Souls 2. While I get Elden Ring is an open world, and that would logically mean there are gonna be more enemies, the enemy density is absolutely insane in some parts. Even in some smaller interior areas like Academy of Raya Lucaria or Elfile, that's pretty compact compared to some other places. I wouldn't be surprised if it triggered someone's social anxiety, because my fucking god, the gank. The gank is back! And it's not like they would leave you alone like ever. Their aggro range is insane. It feels like they genuinely have some personal grudge against you. I don't know, like a sibling chasing the other one who ate their snacks, or your pissed off friend whose parents are divorcing cause you fucked his mom. Something to that matter. They, like, seriously fucking hate you. The further into the game I got, the more obvious it was. It feels like the endgame relies heavily on trying to make the game less stale and keep you on your feet, but the only way they seem to be capable of doing that is an angry mob on speed in every room. Elfile was horrible. Visually, absolutely gorgeous. Staggeringly beautiful area. And the Clean Rot Knights, you know, those knight guys, were so fun to fight, as well when they were one-on-one. But then they decide to give you the family package of bullshit, but you're still just one single person in a room, so they force it down your throat until you start to suffocate. That area specifically got the best of me. Do you remember the memory of the old Iron King? You know, Sir Elon Runback? It felt exactly the same, except you could kill Elonites enough times for them to stop respawning. There's ton of enemies, some guys shot me from the rafters, so I felt like I'm back in an Orlando. There are 2 Earth Tree avatars, one at the end of an opening section behind multiple fucking ballistas, and if you wander at the bottom of the area, have fun dealing with like 4 fucking grafted Seons! Those still are some of my least favorite, most bullshit enemies in the game. They are absolute dread no matter what build you have. They have high poise, they are too speedy for ranged, too fast for rolling, too aggressive to block, and they can teleport. Seriously, fuck these. These guys, the Finger Creepers, and the Misbegotten Warriors. It was alright when there was one in Lindell, and didn't respawn once killed, but the Helic Tree one just made me roleplay as Joseph fucking Joestar and run away from my problems. That's the common approach I had in most of the endgame. I like not most, because I really don't like doing that. I like exploration, even though I have a huge issue with not knowing where to go often. But the Helic Tree and Elfile were areas where I really couldn't be bothered with it. As well as the Consecrated Snowfield. I just rushed through from Grace to Grace and I was done. I just wanted to get to the boss. Which is a nice segue into that section, because Elden Ring bosses, yeah, they suck for the most part. Most of the bosses that I like, I fought early in the game. Margit, Godric, the first Crystallian, or the Tibia Mariners. I love these. They were so creative with the spectral ferrymen of the dead. But then came Renala, another proof that FromSoft can't make a good pure sorcery fight. Seriously, Gwendolyn, Elana, Crystal Sage, Mikalash, now Renala. They all suck, and I say that as someone who loves some of these for their lore and vibe. The only somewhat good sorcerer fights in my book are Aldrich or Martyr Logarius, and that's because of the added melee. This fight is just tedious phase 1 and bullshit magic spam and summons in phase 2, while she makes distance between you two the moment you engage. While Radahn was visually one of the most beautiful spectacles in the game, the fight itself wasn't. I see people like this guy a lot, but I just can't seem to click with it. I summoned for him because I knew if I got stuck, I would abandon the game again. And even though I kept my distance, I still got pulled by the gravity pull. What a joke. Astel was another. Looked cool, but his movement was just so off for me, and the long-range attack the moment you barely get to the boss room is just annoying. It's like the charge attack Ornstein likes to do that everyone hates! Astel was just frustrating at parts. So were the Valiant Gargoyles. The biggest dropkick in the face was the fact that not only did they deal poison, but... Man, since when does fucking Poison Cloud deal damage? Was I in a coma for a few years? Did I just suppress the memory of it? Was normal poison not annoying enough, so you had to make them completely unapproachable? The same issue was with Regal Ancestor Spirit. While the entire fight was good, and I found it as one of my favorites when I encountered it, its healing seriously pissed me off. It's not even the fact that it would restore some HP itself. It's the fact that it's, again, completely unapproachable when it does, engulfing itself in its magical flames, or whatever these blue fart clouds are. At first, I was under the impression this could be similar to Viker Amelia. You could still approach her and try to out-damage, or at least negate most of her healing. With Regal Ancestor Spirit, I felt Miyazaki laughing in my face as I could only watch its HP go up again. And the list goes on. I swear every single goddamn fucking boss had some bullshit that would completely ruin them for me. Be it the Foreskin duo, or Plusy and his double laser, as if Midir's singular one wasn't hard enough. But oh boy, I hope you like all of these bosses enough anyway, since you're gonna fight the vast majority of them more than once. You have multiple dupes. Even if we look at the trophy-related bosses only. We have Margit and Morgoth, Mog the Omen, and Mog the Lord of Blood, Royal Knight Loretta, and Loretta, Knight of the Halictree, then Godfrey the First Elden Lord and Hoaralu Warrior, or Ancestor Spirit and Regal Ancestor Spirit. And from all that I recall, Godskin Noble and then Godskin Duo, which I think is also a double fight in one of the dungeons, as well as Soul, Godskin Apostles, which I fought twice before even getting to Crumbling Farm Azula. Until this playthrough, I was only aware of Margit and Morgoth. Believe it or not, I am often an advocate for copied bosses. I am gonna throw fists for Lawrence or Champion Gundyr. Both of them are amazing fights that I enjoy thoroughly. Hell, Gundyr especially. That dude is just 9 feet tall mass of steel, and it's fucking terrifying to see him just charge towards you like a semi-truck fueled with nothing but pure rage and spite. No magic, no buffs, sheer fucking spite. And according to the lore, he does so on Soul Level 1 because he never got to meet his Firekeeper. Heed my words, this bitch would fuck up the lords if he got the chance. Or do you know what would be cool? If we could actually find Gascoigne in Hunter's Nightmare, since he went drunk with blood, or even Henrik if you finish his quest. That would be so fucking good to have some extra dialogue as well. Copied content can be done well, and Morgoth being one isn't necessarily a flaw, since he had some change in his moveset. But when half of the main bosses are recycled, one gradually loses any sort of enthusiasm for further exploration when it's not gonna be rewarded. If you wanna bitch about Blue Smelter Demon, Dragon Riders, or bosses made enemies in Dark Souls 2, you better fucking acknowledge this issue in Elden Ring as well. I would be willing to overlook reuse of dungeon bosses, as those are there just as extras and as means to get runes. But how dare you call this a good game when half of the story bosses are just copy and paste too, as I said before. I was under the impression each area has its own fights too, like Crystallians being exclusive to Lurnia, Misbegottens to Weeping Peninsula, or Dragons for Caelid and Dragonbarrow. Oh Gwen, was I wrong? This is one of the reasons I didn't like Elden Ring being open world. If you have seen one, you have seen it all. Same runes, graveyards, outposts, or dungeons, and in them, the same reused, and if we are lucky, slightly renamed bosses. I am sick and tired of facing the same enemies. I am tired of ulcerated tree spirits, magma worms, earth tree avatars, the exact same dragon fight with just different status effect, and no, I don't want to fight any other fucking tree sentinel. No, I was not excited to fight the one before Maliketh. I already didn't have fun fighting the Sentinel duo in Altus Plateau, because I already fought him before, not even counting the one in starting area in Limgrave. Not even Estelle is safe. There is a dungeon where you can fight him without Rani. It's just stupid. I don't care if it's a species. Astel was supposed to be this major point and unique encounter to a questline so important it affects your goddamn ending. Why is this even a thing? And over time, these enemies become not just another boss, but basic enemies too. Whatever you find in the dungeon will be strolling the world later on, respawnable and rewardless. Or vice versa, they take any basic ass enemy, toss it into an enclosed space, slap a big red health bar on it and call it a boss. This is in my book just very lazy approach. It's the case of, we want to make Chalice dungeons better this time, but making them just as bad as they were before. And I am not particularly a fan of Chalice dungeons either, despite my love for Bloodborne. This is just a way to either fill the emptiness or to add difficulty in the cheapest way possible. The map is obviously too big even for From Software's own capabilities, but then, why make a world this large when you are clearly not capable of keeping up with the amount of space it leaves you with? I would still rather have the linearity of Bloodborne or Dark Souls 3 over empty plains with cookie-cutter assets I know from the literal start of the game. I don't care about the lore reason behind it. I won't see Godefroy as anything else but just copied Phase 1 Godric. Cause that's literally what he fucking is. No, I don't care for the lore. Why the hell is Margit in Altus Plateau? And this all just combines in this amalgamation of cheap bullshit that many call artificial difficulty. And this game stinks of it. Like, seriously reeks. Like the school lunch you leave in your bag for the entirety of summer break, and it gets so moldy it eventually grows legs and walks away to star in Resident Evil Biohazard. Overall, artificial difficulty was my major issue with the game. I shouldn't prefer to run through areas instead of engaging with it and exploring. I shouldn't be annoyed when the boss's health bar appears. I shouldn't finish a fight and feel glad it's over. I shouldn't feel like I'm constantly underleveled, and I definitely shouldn't need to change my build to accommodate bosses' movesets. We get hundreds of weapons, dozens of ashes, spells and tools, but why is only a handful of them actually viable to enjoy and manage the game? I'm not going to replay the game until I'm familiar with every move of every enemy so I can play with whatever weapon I need. The replayability of Elden Ring is already limited. And before you say, oh, you can finish this game with anything, yeah, but for example, I was looking up guides, what I can use against bosses I struggled with, and usually I got the same responses to each and every one of them, which were this specific weapon or this specific spell, which would require me to respec. I know, respeccing in this game is fairly easy, and you have a lot of material to respec multiple times, but I shouldn't be forced to do that just to make the game enjoyable in the first place. Of course, there is more of why we play these games. It's the world building, the lore, the challenge, the friends we made along the way, be it NPCs or co-op buddies we vibe with and never saw again. But boss fights are staple of the series. They define these games. They are the heart of them. But when the difficulty stems from unlimited FP and stamina for the boss, constant AoEs, ridiculously strong and fast attack patterns, and insane health pools, that's just not it. It feels like this time FromSoft didn't focus on being fun, but on being hard instead. With so many good Soulslikes, it almost seems like they felt threatened by them, and they wanted to prove they are still the best in the business. The big issue was that none of us mind the game being difficult. Again, it's one of the reasons why we play these games. Looking for a way to overcome this challenge towering before us, restricting us from our progress. Learning the boss moveset and finding openings to claim victory is one of the most satisfying feelings I had in gaming. I love the adrenaline rush, the shaking of my hands and fast heartbeat, the moment my body relaxes and I soak into my bed in relief upon seeing that I have already defeated this strong enemy. In Elden Ring, I didn't feel this. My general opinion is that difficult doesn't mean good. Again, obviously that's why we play Souls games and Soulslikes, but I swear to God, I cannot in clear conscience say that boss like Malenia is good. In fact, I feel like she is one of the worst bosses I have ever fought in the series. I heard of her back then at release. She was everywhere. I thought this is gonna be the magnum opus of difficult bosses. I loved Orphan of Kos, and I was so fucking hyped, it was unreal. Then I found out she was just an unfair, poorly balanced thirst trap designed solely for challenge runners. Overall, she is the amalgamation of bullshit herself. She has hyper armor, the insta-kill shitfast that is the waterfowl dance, lifesteal off of every hit including from shields and ashes, and entire second phase on top of that. Apparently, patching Radahn twice at this point was alright, but erasing a single of these things from Malenia to make her actually fair was a stretch. I guess. What goes through the devs' heads is not my business, I guess. And yes, I know she is beatable, I saw her killed on rune level 1 hitless, blah blah blah, you know the drill, there are people who do that. Radagon himself was not only one of my favorite designs in the game, but he was also sort of difficult but pretty solid final boss. If it wasn't for fucking Elder Beast ruining the fight. This Call Beyond looking shit nugget just spawns out of nowhere with no foreshadowing and just evaporates Radagon to claim its position as the final boss. Even Moon Prisons, as bad as the boss was, had some foreshadowing by showing that each realm has Great One hosting it. Where the fuck does this glowing sperm with wings come from? Yo buddy, Mystery and Cult, they say they need to demask you or something. I am aware it's meant to look like the Laniakea cluster, but I do not find chasing this glitter-filled piss balloon across the entire area fun at all. My condolences to all who had to fight this shit before they allowed you to use Torrent. And it's get even worse, because if you die, you have to fight Radagon all over again. This further shows they tried to make the game hard, because From Software, what the hell? You did this before in Bloodborne and it worked. And even before, there was Throne Watcher and Defender, Nashandra and Aldia. Why can't Radagon follow German's example and have some fucking common decency to stay fucking dead once you actually kill him? Body being evaporated doesn't look very reversible. Elden Ring just falls flat in every field for me besides graphics. But I will rather play with gem covered in dirt and mud than with shit covered in fancy glitter. I thought a lot about the comparison to Dark Souls 2, after one comment under Malenia rant which said, if they would reskin Gank, Squad, or Frigid Outskirts, it would be getting praised. The thing is, Elden Ring already has both in the form of Consecrated Snowfield, being an area where you can see shit because of a snowstorm that's not worth exploring in the slightest, and Fia's Champions, which throws not 3, but 5 enemies at you instead. Yes, they are not beloved, but again, Dark Souls 2 is getting major shit for that, while Elden Ring is still being praised like these things don't exist within them. And the more praise this receives, the more of that we are going to get. More recycled content, more poorly balanced bosses whose difficulty stems from delays and input reading, AoEs and infinite combos, more areas reminiscent of the Iron Passage, even less intuitive quests, and all this crap. I am tired of having 18 tabs open to see on which end of the map NPC moves to. Where sits this one specific merchant I need for one specific item I will use once and never again, where this specific cookbook is for the most basic items this game doesn't allow you to buy for some reason. Obviously also on the other side of the map at the bottom of the dungeon or a cave. Just so I can craft shit to stop poison. And I swear to God, if we will get anything similar to Ordina Village again, I am going to file an emotional distress lawsuit against From Software. This is a heartbreaking C rank for me. I suppose I was expecting much more from a game that got such hype. Also, I didn't mention anything from the DLC except another patch of Radahn, cause I didn't play it. Not only did Elden Ring leave a bitter taste in my mouth, but it's also too expensive for me at the moment. If I get to it, I might talk about it. but I don't see that happening anytime soon. I could drop it to D rank, but it definitely isn't as bad as Mortal Shell. Nothing I played was as bad as Mortal Shell. Also, beside the visuals and some quality of life features, it gets some bonus points for Godfrey and his massive thunder thighs. Like, goddamn, you can't fool me anymore. Now I see what shattered the Elden Ring. Enotria, the last song. If I told you I was excited for this game, it would be an extreme understatement. Since I saw the cinematic of Captain Spaventa on, I think it was Summer Game Fest, I was dying to play this. In the last tier list video, I talked about the demo I played, and you know I loved it, mentioning just a few tweaks it would need. I shit you not, I was so hyped, I even pre-ordered the game. Literally the first game I have ever pre-ordered. Yeah, I was serious. On one hand, I love this game with dying fashion. On one hand, I love this game with dying passion. On the other, it left me frustrated or disappointed so many times I didn't even think I would get this far. This is gonna be a long rant, so get ready. I will start with the main thing, obviously, that I love so fucking much. The art direction. Enotria has an extremely unique setting compared to most of the other Soulslikes. Most of them are either dark western medieval fantasy, where even games like The Surge or Remnant get lost despite their attempts to spice it up with some tech and guns. Then, in the past few years, there has been a fucking flood of games set in Asia, like, holy shit. And then, we have a growing number of Bloodborne clones as well. Obviously, just because you have a commonly used setting doesn't mean that the game is inherently bad, but it makes it stand out less than something like Enotria, which used Italy and its folklore as the main setting. I am in absolute love with this. It has been a gust of fresh wind to explore something else than dilapidated medieval settlement or Victorian/Baroque city drowning in darkness. It was refreshing to bask in the burning sun of Falesia Magna or colorful, lovely streets of Quinta. I have seen one comment where someone was like, "Well, I am Italian and this is the most tourist version of Italy ever." My god, does this dude want you to run around supermarkets and tourist hotels or what? Area unlocked. Borgo Ignazia. Italy is among some of the most culturally rich countries in the world, yet the peak of human creativity when it comes to Italy stops at the Roman Empire. The more modern setting to 15 to 1600s seems criminally underused for how interesting and visually appealing it is. And as this game shows, it was the peak of commedia dell'arte, an art form of professional theater characterized by actors wearing masks and improvising large portions of the story. The story of Enotria essentially is that Arlecchino wanted to preserve the world the way it is, and wrote a play or story of it that keeps it stagnant, aka explanation for why things respawn and such. They have their roles that they have to fulfill, be it an actor, gardener, or soldier, and that is something that will never cease to be. You are maskless, a puppet with no role, and you can choose your own destiny. The only other character with essentially free will is Pulcinella, a man who pretty much guides you through and offers some lore dump here and there. Reason being that he asked Arlecchino to do so, as he is master of improvisation and would find a set role just... ugh. The story is very simple, very vanilla, but it's not like the worst I have ever seen. I have been searching up some mask designs on my own, since in story, me and Arak Wright, we have OC wearing Venetian mask, and when I saw the types are having the same names as the bosses of Enotria, it made me spiral down the research hole, and it was so cool to see where they came from. You see, most of the mainline bosses are created after set roles and archetypes used in the theater. There is Zani, one of the oldest characters in Commedia dell'arte, out of which many other Zanis came to be, like Arlecchino and Pulcinella themselves, so it makes sense that he was the first mask and teacher of the set too. Obviously there is Arlecchino, the contrast between flash of brilliance and plain idiocy, switching between the two like a metronome. It fits he would be to want to fuck things up for everybody. Pulcinella, the cunning swindler and social chameleon with no ability to shut the fuck up. Pantalone, the greedy and sinister old merchant, and Balanzone, Il Dottore, often found by Pantalone's side. A parody of the educated class, either actually smart or just thinking he is while speaking pure nonsense. My favorite of the game is Il Capitano, the self-proclaimed conqueror, making up stories of his achievements to impress those around him, to only impress himself. He is egotistical and proud, with chest out, occupying as much space as possible. But the moment danger appears, he is the first one to run away and scream in frequency only little girls usually know how to produce. But don't worry, he will have a story to explain why tactical retreat and submission is the best option. In general, the art direction of this game is its strongest point. The areas are beautiful, the designs are awesome, like some of the weapons are hella creative, and well done designs, and the music, the music is absolute fire. My favorite still has to be Felicia Mania OST, because it's so fucking good. I also greatly enjoyed the exploration. While the levels are pretty linear with well-placed shortcuts I'd expect in Dark Souls 1, there were these branching paths that always gave me some extra place where to go. Usually it was something like a chest with new mask line or weapon, or an Harmonia amplifier, but it was hella enjoyable. Considering you have jump in this game, there can be some light platforming involved, which I don't mind at all. Another thing worth mentioning is that this game has very good voice acting. I joke about Pulci not being able to shut the fuck up, but I never got tired of his voice. Same with Curtis or Giargungolo. And I feel like most roles were just very well portrayed. I just hope that they get to voice the remaining NPCs that are undubbed at this point. They added cutscenes replacing some form of still shots, so maybe in the future.
Crabbert not fighter. Crabbert have other talents, like eating, world class, and poetry. Friend, me make poem. Here go. Missing you comes in waves. Tonight I drowning. What think? Simple, yes? Me wrote of stone I lost. Was good stone.
The tutorial is still annoying infodump, which they really should have incorporated more naturally into gameplay than this, but whatever, I guess. Since the demo, there have been some pleasant changes, and overall, I saw some pretty handy quality of life features in the game. First thing, they translated the stats. They used to be in Italian, so it was hard to understand for non-Italian speakers, but now it's in English, and it's much better this way, especially for me as someone who doesn't speak Italian. Duh. The main feature of this game is still the mask system. Essentially, you can have 3 masks at once, each with different perks, weapons, aspects, and mask lines, and switch between them. On paper, this is extremely cool idea, even using different masks to progress certain quest lines, but I rarely use this on New Game. Only time I used this a lot was in New Game Plus, when I went for a trophy requiring you to kill all bosses with their own masks. And not gonna lie, it was fun, but again, not necessary. I felt no need to use this feature once I got comfortable with my build. Personally, I use the Mask of Zani with his mask line, and from the beginning of New Game Plus, I use the aspect of Arlecchino, as it adds 20 levels to all stats. OP as fuck, huh? But I gotta say, this game offers a lot of customization, which is hella neat, whether you are using the mask system or not. You have 2 weapon slots, 1 parry gem slot, mask lines, masks, aspect, perks, and levels. Which is quite a bit. Good job on that part. Sure, some are objectively better than others, like Grand Celebration or Funeral Blaze lines and aspect of Arlecchino, but the game lets you customize a lot. And in case you change your mind, you can always refund materials from upgraded lines, masks, or weapons and use them on something else, which is an underrated feature these games should include much more. There is also an element aspect to the game. There is Malano, Gratia, Vis, and Fatuo. Each of them have a different aspect when applied and work as trade-offs. Gratia, when applied, slowly heals you, but getting hit causes an explosion. Or Fatuo, which boosts your elemental damage, but essentially grants lifesteal to anyone who hits you. Melano is straight up poison, but if you poison an enemy, they emit a poison cloud that can poison you as well. It's also a pretty cool feature. They even added an element wheel to your HUD, which is pretty handy because I personally get them mixed up, especially Vis and Fatuo. So it was cool to have visual reminder of how they work. But in all honesty, I hope more would be done with this. I went with Battle Mage build, building my perks around mask line spam, so personally I never worried about the elements. Also, even though they tried to make it a bigger feature, there was nothing like resins in Dark Souls that could apply an effect to your weapon. Except certain mask lines, plus some lines have some effect of element on their own, but still, I think the resins would be a good addition for more melee-focused builds without needing to sacrifice a mask line slot. While on the topic of melee, I was happy to see they tweaked the Ultra Great Swords and Great Hammers. They were just useless in the demo. Too slow and dealing too little damage to be worth it. I played with the Abandoned Bell because of its S-scaling with Battle Mage, and it seemed fine. What wasn't fine was the absolute lack of any poise. So even if Ultra Great Swords are better than in the demo, it's still horrible in some areas. There is hyper armor with some skills or lines or something, but it's not helping that much. There isn't any change of armor, and not even fully charged R2 offers any poise, which gets annoying pretty fast. Another main mechanic of this game is parrying. They definitely have larger windows than some other games, but I'd say they are not as good as they could be. There is no flow or rhythm as it is in Sekiro, for example, but they work well. I'm not going to complain too much, mainly because it's my own skill issue. I totally suck at parrying. It's also entirely possible to beat the game with no parries whatsoever. But if there is one thing I love about the parries though, it's the sound design. When you get the good parry, it's just mwah. Plus, if you struggle too much, you can actually change the difficulty from Souls-like mode to story mode. This is probably the first time I see a difficulty setting in a Souls game. It's weird, but I'll allow it. Might be handy if you struggle on a boss, won't lie. I used it against Veltha and Baldovino, because that fucker just insta-killed me somehow every time. The automats have the shittiest bait attacks for real. But even if you just want to a casual stroll through, it might be good for new players. The feature is disabled from New Game Plus onwards though, so keep that in mind. By far, at least in my book, this game sounds good, right? You are offered complex builds with many ways to customize them, gorgeous art style, amazing voice acting, unique world that is fun to explore. It's almost too good to be true, right? Yes, that is the case to some extent. While I have greatly enjoyed my time playing Enotria, this game was suffering. From what? Not famine or anything, but a large amount of technical difficulties. Yeah, many issues have been patched even during my own playthrough, like some of the bugged trophies. It still left a bitter taste in my mouth. The amount of times there would be a bug, I would get stuck, cripple through textures, or just have enemies, even bosses, completely AI freeze, was staggering. I will mention some specifics here just to vent and give you an idea. One time, when I was in New Game Plus Plus collecting weapons and kills for trophies, I got into Gatekeeper boss fight in Falesia Mania Market by accident, and tried to save and quit. It completely fucked the game, to the extent I couldn't load my save at all. I could start a new one, but this one was fucked. I had to reload a save that I made hours ago. And that would not be manageable if I didn't have PS Plus subscription. At that point, I only had New Game Plus Plus Sanctum Zealot missing in my compendium, So you can imagine how pissed I was. I had to repeat hours of farming. I tried to save and quit one time before, only to load in an untriggered boss fight. Not even outside the boss room as one would expect. I was just in the middle of the boss room and the boss was nowhere to be seen. Bug that would be constant was that I would get stuck mid-dialogue. This happened all the time. I would need to quit my game, which made me hella anxious if I won't load in stuck anyway, and it made a mess of making sure which story or deity compendium I got or not. And something I saw people mention too a lot was issues with autosaves in New Game Plus, or after beating the final boss if you decided to remain in the current cycle for collecting and such. Like the autosave icon would appear, but nothing would be actually saved. I play sometimes in the morning before my shift, and seeing that those precious 2 or 3 hours I got to waste was just infuriating. I pre-ordered the game. I had 2 days of early access, and I haven't played it then. Because the morning after early access, I woke up to an absolute shitstorm on Reddit. Spam of posts about missing ladder in Monastery of Maya, falling through the floors, crashes, bugs that made it impossible to progress, and massive avalanche of refund requests. You see, this was the biggest issue with the game since its release. And again, even if most of these issues got patched, do you think this will change the reception of the players this game already disappointed? Those who couldn't progress because of a bug, or those who lost their entire saves? Now I want to speak to the devs of Giamma if they ever happen to see this. This game has extreme potential. It is still a pretty solid first game from a studio who made only mobile games until that point, and I still do believe its potential can be fulfilled with a lot of work from the dev team. But you have already stained your own reputation by releasing your game in this broken, fucked up state. And no matter how many patches you release, you will be known for the same reasons as Lords of the Fallen, Cyberpunk 2077, Fallout 76, or No Man's Sky. Clusterfuck of a game that got actually great way too late. Yeah, you can redeem yourself, but players won't forget. This was your first big project. There was no pressure on you from the side of the community or such. You definitely could have delayed the release date by few months even, to make sure the game runs well, instead of trying to fulfill all promised patches on your patch board that didn't need to exist to begin with. It's not good graphics or good marketing that will make you remembered, yet that seemed to be your main focus. Instead of earning your reputation and place in the Souls community, you attempted to buy it. It makes you look like the rich kid trying to pay his way into the Souls-like scene. And again, even though my words might seem harsh, I don't want this studio to stop making games, or not to try to make another Souls-like. Despite all I said, Enotria is pretty good for a debut game. My point is, next time you work on a game, learn from these mistakes. Take your time, and please make sure your money goes to your tech team instead of Souls YouTubers like Lil Aggie or Zero Lenny to advertise you. No shade on Lenny or Aggie, I like their content and yeah, money is money, but once again, this will not earn you a place in the community. Good game does. Also, please add a skip button to your credits, that would be a nice addition to your game. That being said, despite all my criticism when it comes to technical state of the game, I want to put this game to an A rank. There is a reason why I wanted to continue playing Enotria despite all the fuck-ups. I abandoned Lords of the Fallen despite being extremely hyped for the game as well, but I continued playing Enotria. Enotria is still such a refreshing experience in market already drowning in Soulslikes in recent years. Music, voice acting, art style, the exploration, the combat variety, this was still a game I thoroughly enjoyed to the point I am personally willing to squint my eyes a bit at the issues. And maybe if you watch this video when it comes out, or days, weeks, months later, Enotria might be running perfectly fine. To which I say, fuck yeah! If you're going for the platinum though, be ready for horrible grind for all the mask shards, compendium entries, and weapons. It's fucking horrible. Though despite farming them in New Game myself, I did get many of the weapons during natural progression through New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus, so that's a thing. Please keep that in mind and be ready if you decide to do a platinum run. Alrighty, the last entry is gonna be a very short one, and that's The Search. This game captivated me a lot with its setting, as I don't think I saw any other Souls-likes that would be specifically sci-fi like this one. I think it was a very cool idea, and yeah, it feels like a Souls-like. I did play really just a short bit, I think the opening area with the first boss and a little bit after, so I didn't experience much, but I don't know. I didn't really feel this game. It felt really clunky and heavy, which like makes sense considering you're stuck in a mech, but like there's a difference between Space Marine or Subject Delta kind of heavy, and this is as responsive as someone in a coma kind of heavy. And yeah, I know it's also because I played mostly with heavy weapons, but when I wasn't, it felt like I tried to destroy a tank with a plastic fork. Like the damage felt really poor. That and the fact that some Souls-likes have no fucking idea what trash mobs are or how to make them, especially if they want to place so many enemies around you. The first boss, Pax or PAX or whatever, also a bit weird. I get gimmicks and stuff, but like, this boss only got posture damage when hit, but when the bar was full, nothing happened. He started shooting rockets, but that's it. The deal was that you had to run beneath him when he does, so he like blows his own legs up. It does make sense, but it wasn't very intuitive is what I'm trying to say. What I did like was the body part system, where you had enemies with weakened specific body parts, and if you needed a specific piece of armor upgraded, you have to aim for the specific body part on enemy mech's body for them to drop these parts, which was pretty neat. The animations were pretty sweet, and the underground sections felt really tense. If anything, this game knows how to make a good horror vibe, be it with the clunkiness or the atmosphere. It still feels like a game I would rather watch someone else play than to play myself though. C rank probably. I did commonly see this game being ranked lower than Surge 2 in general, and I do have that one too, so maybe some other time. Don't know if that's gonna be in another video though. I have many Souls-likes, like the big titles that should be here already and often stands as the first one someone goes to play after FromSoft games like, you know, Neo or Lies of P. But I am very picky, and I have to be in specific mood for these games, so even I don't know what is or isn't gonna be in the next tier list. I really don't plan ahead. I wanted to do a Platinum Alphabet challenge last year. Volong was actually a part of that, but I figured I really can't force myself into playing something even though I previously wanted to. Just don't ask how my brain works, I have no idea.
Who knows? I'm not even sure myself.
Also, at this point, I am working on another Souls video. Been doing another run of Dark Souls Remastered specifically, so it's possible I will take a break again before I will need to scratch that Souls itch. Hopefully I get some games of my backlog in the meantime. Which brings me to the question if there would be any interest about non-Souls videos. I did want to make one about Platinums I got last year, but many of these games were not something I felt like talking about cause there just might not have been much to say about them as it is. Though there definitely were some games I would love to talk about. Any feedback is appreciated. Obviously, as well as recommendations for Souls-likes you'd want me to try. That's gonna be all for today though. You can, I guess, like this video, share it among your friends. You can even tell me if I am a stupid hacking doo-doo head for not liking your favorite game in the comment. Be sure to make it long though, algorithm is gonna love you. I will call it quits now though. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a wonderful day. Don't forget to drink a lot of water and at least open your window to get some sunlight and fresh air. And I will see you next time. I was Akuma, and this was Relatively Normal Game Show.